The space station Port Halcyon floated above the planet like a bright jewel. Its wide rings spun slowly, keeping the artificial gravity steady inside. Cargo ships, passenger liners, and small shuttles came and went at all hours. The central docks were always busy, filled with the noise of tools, voices, and the deep hum of engines. At Dock 12, a small crowd had gathered. People were looking toward the largest and most expensive ship in the dock, a sleek star yacht with silver hull plates and shining blue stripes. Its name was written in glowing letters near the bow, the Azure Wind. It belonged to Orvin Lask, a wealthy trader who enjoyed showing off both his money and his ship. Orvin stood near the boarding ramp, smiling at the people who had come to see his latest upgrades. His jacket was fine silk from the trade worlds. His boots were polished until they shone. He had a way of speaking loudly so everyone nearby could hear him. "This," he said, patting the hull, "is the fastest and most beautiful ship in this entire sector. Not one captain here could match her speed or her luxury." The crowd murmured in agreement, though some rolled their eyes. Everyone knew Orvin liked to boast. Before anyone could speak, a sharp alarm began to sound from inside the yacht. The high-pitched noise echoed across the dock. A voice from the ship's system followed, calm but urgent. "Warning. Coolant pressure loss detected in main drive. Immediate maintenance required." Orvin froze for a moment, then laughed and waved his hand, as if it was nothing. "It is just a minor issue. My engineers can handle it. Still..." He looked around at the crowd with a sly grin. "This might be interesting." He stepped forward and raised his voice. "You there? Yes, all of you. I will make you a promise. Stop the leak in less than 10 minutes and I will give you the ship." He chuckled, as if the idea was a joke. "It is impossible, of course. My engineers will take hours to find the fault, but if you can do it faster, the Azure Wind is yours." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Most thought he was only playing. Some people shook their heads. No one moved toward the ramp. It was too risky. A coolant leak in the main drive could cause serious damage if handled wrong. At the edge of the crowd, a quiet figure watched. Jalen Varr, a dock mechanic, had just finished his shift when he heard the alarm. He wore plain work clothes stained with engine grease. His hands were rough from years of repairs. Most people barely noticed him when he walked by. But Jalen knew. Engines. He knew them better than anyone else in Dock 12. He stepped forward slowly. "I will do it," he said. The crowd turned to look at him. A few people laughed again, but now with surprise. Orvin raised an eyebrow. You? You are a dockhand, yes? This is a star yacht, not a cargo tug. Are you sure you want to try?" Jalen met his gaze without fear. "Yes." Something in his voice made the laughter fade. Orvin smiled again, but this time it looked a little sharper. "Very well. The timer will start when you set foot inside. Remember? 10 minutes. If you succeed, the Azure Wind is yours." Jalen walked up the ramp. Inside, the yacht's corridors were clean and bright. The air smelled faintly of polished metal and new circuits. The alarm was still sounding, steady and urgent. He moved quickly toward the engine room, his eyes scanning every detail. He pulled a small handheld scanner from his belt. Not standard dock tools, but something he had built himself over years of work. In the engine room, the main drive core pulsed with a faint blue glow. Coolant pipes ran along the walls like silver veins. Jalen followed the readings on his scanner, moving past the main coolant tank. The leak was not obvious. There was no spray, no pool of liquid. The scanner chirped softly, guiding him to a section of pipe hidden behind a thick protective panel. He knelt and ran his hand along the panel's edge. The heat was just slightly higher here. That was enough. He pulled a small cutter from his belt, opened the panel, and found the fault. A hairline fracture in the plasma conduit. Coolant was leaking out in vapor form, almost invisible without the right sensors. Jalen thought quickly. Replacing the conduit would take too long. But he could reroute the coolant flow through a backup line and seal the fracture temporarily. He took out a small coil of emergency patch tape and a vial of cooling gel. Working fast, he applied the gel to slow the leak, then wrapped the conduit in the tape to hold the pressure steady. He reached up and flipped the bypass control on the wall. The hiss of escaping vapor stopped. The alarm cut off. The room went quiet except for the soft hum of the drive core. Jalen closed the panel, stood, and checked the readings one more time. Coolant pressure was stable. Power output was normal. The system showed full readiness. He turned and walked back toward the ramp. The timer by the door showed just over 3 minutes had passed. Outside, the crowd was still gathered. Orvin looked up as Jalen stepped out. The alarm had stopped, and the yacht's status lights glowed steady green. "It is fixed," Jalen said simply. The dock fell silent for a moment. Then people began to whisper to each other. Orvin's smile faded. He pulled out his datapad, checked the ship's internal report, and saw the truth. The coolant pressure was perfect. The main drive was running smoothly. 3 minutes. That was all it had taken. Orvin stared at Jalen as if seeing him for the first time. The crowd waited to see what would happen next. The dock was quiet for a moment as everyone tried to understand what they had just seen. Then the whispers grew louder. People were saying Jalen's name now, some with surprise, some with new respect. It was rare for anyone to fix a main drive. Coolant leaked so quickly, and no one could remember it ever being done in minutes. Orvin Lask stood with his arms crossed, his smile gone but his pride still visible in his eyes. "Interesting," he said slowly. "I will admit I did not expect you to succeed. But the question remains, how did you manage it so fast?" Jalen met his gaze without hesitation. "I listened to the alarm. The ship's system said it was coolant pressure loss in the main drive. That told me where to look. I used my scanner to find the exact spot and made a temporary bypass. It is stable now, but you should replace the damaged section soon." Orvin raised one eyebrow. "So you are telling me you did in minutes what trained yacht engineers would take hours to do?" "I am telling you I did what needed to be done," Jalen replied. The crowd reacted with a mix of amusement and admiration. Some clapped quietly. A few were already talking about how this story would spread across the station by nightfall. Orvin studied Jalen for another moment. His expression was unreadable. Then he spoke again. "Well, I did make a promise, did I not?" His voice carried a trace of humor again, but there was something else beneath it, a tone that suggested he was thinking several steps ahead. "Perhaps I should prepare the ownership transfer documents." A wave of surprise swept through the crowd. No one had expected Orvin to even consider giving away his prized ship. Some whispered that he would never actually do it, that he was only playing with words. Others said that if anyone could force him to keep his promise, it would be someone. Like Jalen, who had won the challenge so completely, Jalen's face stayed calm. He did not smile or show excitement. "That is your choice. I am not here to argue," he said. Orvin tilted his head slightly, as if testing Jalen's reaction. "You are a curious man, Jalen Var. You do not seem eager for a prize most people would fight for." "I do not fight for what I have not earned," Jalen answered. "If you give me the ship, I will take it. If you do not, I will go back to my work." A few people in the crowd nodded at his words. They saw that Jalen was not trying to win favor or force a deal. He had done the repair because he knew he could. Whether the reward came or not was secondary. Orvin smiled again, but this time it seemed more genuine. "You interest me, mechanic. Very well, we will speak again tomorrow. I have business to attend to today, but I will not forget this moment." He gestured toward his crew, who were already stepping aboard the yacht to continue their checks. The crowd began to break apart, each person leaving with their own version of the story forming in their minds. Some hurried away to tell others. A few lingered, looking at Jalen with new respect. Jalen turned to leave the dock. The workday was over, and he preferred to avoid attention. He walked the narrow metal walkways toward the quieter section of the station where the maintenance crews lived. His quarters were small, a single room with a bunk, a desk, and a wall cabinet filled with carefully arranged tools. Each tool was cleaned and stored as if it were part of a larger puzzle. He sat at the desk and took out his scanner. It was no ordinary device. Years ago, when he was still new to station work, he had started building it from spare parts and old components. Over time, he had improved it, adding sensors that could detect changes in temperature, pressure, and even energy flow through multiple layers of plating. That scanner had saved him hours of work and helped him fix systems others could not. As he adjusted one of the scanner's settings, his thoughts went back to the look on Orvin Lask's face. There had been surprise, but also calculation. Jalen knew that men like Orvin rarely did anything without a reason. If Orvin truly meant to give him the azure wind, it would not be without some complication. The next morning, Port Halcyon's central dock was just as busy as always. Cargo drones floated past carrying sealed crates. Crews in bright orange vests shouted to each other as they moved heavy equipment. The smell of fuel and metal filled the air. Jalen was repairing a docking clamp on a small freighter when a voice called his name. He turned to see a man in a neat gray uniform, the kind worn by personal aides to the station's wealthier residents. "Mr. Var," the aide said politely. "Mr. Orvin Lask requests your presence aboard the Azure Wind. He says it is in regard to yesterday's matter." Jalen wiped his hands on a cloth and set down his tools. "Tell him I will come now." The aide nodded and led the way through the dock. When they reached the yacht, the boarding ramp was down, and two of Orvin's crew members stood by the entrance. They gave Jalen a curious look as he passed. Inside, the yacht was as clean and perfect as before, with shining corridors and polished floors. Orvin was waiting in a lounge area lined with soft chairs and clear windows that looked out into the dark expanse of space. He rose when Jalen entered. "Jalen Var," Orvin said warmly. "Please sit. I have considered my promise and my options." Jalen sat across from him. "And," Orvin leaned back in his chair, "I have decided to honor my words. The Azure Wind will be yours. However, you should know that ownership comes with responsibility. The ship is fast and strong, but she is not without her history. There are debts connected to her name. Certain people in the Outer Rim may take interest when they learn she has a new captain." Jalen listened carefully. "Then I will need to be ready for them." Orvin's smile widened. "Good. I prefer to give my ship to someone who understands the risks. We will meet with the station magistrate tomorrow to make the transfer official." Jalen gave a small nod. "I will be here." When he left the yacht, the dock seemed different. The same noise and movement surrounded him, but now he carried the knowledge that in less than a day he might no longer be just a dock mechanic. He might be the captain of one of the finest ships in the sector. The next day, the air in Dock 12 carried a feeling of quiet excitement. Word had spread across Port Halcyon about the strange challenge and the man who had won it. Crew members, traders, and dock workers all spoke of Jalen Var, the mechanic who fixed a coolant leak in just over 3 minutes. Some doubted the story, but others swore they had seen it themselves. Jalen walked toward the dock with steady steps. He was not one to enjoy attention, but the agreement with Orvin Lask was clear. Today, they would meet with the station magistrate to transfer ownership of the Azure Wind. He had not told anyone about it, not even Mira or Dax, his two closest friends on the station. Part of him still wondered if Orvin would find a way to change his mind. When he reached the yacht, the boarding ramp was already lowered. Orvin stood at the base of it, wearing a dark coat with silver trim. His usual smile was there, but it was softer than before. "Punctual," Orvin said as Jalen approached. "Good." The magistrate does not like to be kept waiting. They entered the yacht and made their way to the forward lounge, where a tall woman in a navy robe was waiting. Her hair was tied neatly behind her head, and she carried a small data pad in one hand. This was Magistrate Selra, the official responsible for overseeing property transfers on the station. "I understand there was a wager," Selra said after a brief greeting, "and that it was fulfilled." Orvin gave a small laugh. "Wager is perhaps too strong a word. Let us say it was an agreement, and I am a man who keeps his word." Jalen said nothing, watching as Selra began tapping details into her datapad. She asked for the ship's registry code, its current ownership data, and the terms of transfer. Orvin provided each detail without hesitation. As the process continued, Selra paused and looked at Jalen. "Are you prepared to accept all associated records, debts, and liabilities connected to this vessel?" "Yes," Jalen replied without hesitation. "Then please place your hand on the registry panel," Selra instructed. A small device was brought forward. Jalen placed his palm on the surface, and the panel glowed faintly as it read his identity signature. Selra entered a final command, and the device confirmed the transfer. "It is done," she said. "From this moment, the Azure Wind is legally registered to Captain Jalen Varr." The title felt strange in Jalen's mind. Captain. It was not something he had ever imagined for himself. Yet now it was real. Orvin extended his hand, and Jalen shook it. "May she carry you far," Orvin said. "Just remember what I told you yesterday. There are people beyond this station who may take an interest in her. Not all of them will come with friendly intentions." Jalen met his eyes. "I will keep that in mind." Selra left soon after, her work complete. Orvin lingered a moment longer, as if deciding whether to say more. Then he gave a brief nod and departed, leaving Jalen alone on the yacht. He walked through the corridors, touching the smooth walls, the polished handrails, the panels that hummed quietly with the ship's power. The Azure Wind was unlike any vessel he had worked on before. The drive systems were advanced, the navigation console was state-of-the-art, and the living quarters were spacious and comfortable. He could see why Orvin had valued her so highly, but Jalen also understood ships in a way most did not. This yacht was fast and finely made, but she carried marks of her past. Slight scratches on certain panels suggested previous repairs. Minor. Wear on the navigation controls hinted at long journeys. There was a story in every detail, and Jalen knew he would learn it piece by piece. Later that day, he went to find Mira and Dax. They were in the maintenance bay, working on a small cargo hauler that had arrived that morning. "You look different," Mira said when she saw him. She was short, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. "What happened?" Jalen told them the full story, starting with the coolant leak and ending with the magistrate's confirmation of the transfer. By the time he finished, Dax was grinning from ear to ear. "So you're telling me," Dax said, "that you're the captain of a luxury star yacht now, just like that?" "That's what I'm telling you," Jalen said calmly. Mira crossed her arms. "And what are you planning to do with it?" Jalen glanced at both of them. "I was hoping you'd come with me. Mira, you know navigation better than anyone on this station. Dax, you can handle cargo and deals. I can keep the ship running. Together, we could go places far beyond Port Halcyon." Dax's grin widened. "Count me in." Mira hesitated only a moment before nodding. "If we're doing this, we do it smart. No rushing into trouble." "That's the idea," Jalen said. "But Orvin warned me the ship has debts. The Outer Rim Guild may try to come after her." Mira frowned. "Then we'd better be ready before we leave." They spent the next 2 days preparing. Dax stocked the ship's storage bays with basic supplies and trade goods that could be sold for profit. Mira loaded updated star charts into the navigation system and plotted potential routes that avoided the busiest patrol areas. Jalen ran. Full diagnostics on every system, replacing worn components and fine-tuning the drive for maximum efficiency. By the evening of the second day, the Azure Wind was ready. She gleamed under the dock lights, her hull reflecting the soft glow of the station's massive ring above. The crew, such as it was, stood aboard her bridge, looking out through the wide forward window. "This is it," Dax said quietly. "First voyage." Mira tapped a few keys on the console. "Clear launch path confirmed. No traffic in our sector." Jalen sat in the captain's chair for the first time. His hands rested lightly on the controls. "Let's see what she can do." The docking clamps released with a soft thump. The ship drifted forward, engines humming as they came to life. The station lights slid past the windows, and then the dark expanse of space opened before them. The Azure Wind responded smoothly to every command. She turned gracefully, her engines pushing her forward with steady power. Within minutes, they were leaving the station far behind. For a while, they said nothing, just listening to the hum of the drive and watching the stars ahead. Then Mira spoke. "We're free to choose where we go. That's not something most people ever get." Jalen nodded. "We'll make the most of it. Whatever comes, we'll be ready." The stars stretched ahead like an endless road, and the Azure Wind carried them toward a future none of them could fully see yet. The Azure Wind moved smoothly through the darkness of space. Her engines purred like a well-tuned machine, and every control responded with perfect precision. For Jalen, it was still strange to sit in the captain's chair, but the ship felt right under his command. Mira worked quietly at the navigation console, and Dax checked the cargo inventory from a side panel. They were 2 days out from Port Halcyon, following a trade route that would take them past several small colonies and independent stations. The plan was simple: sell the goods Dax had stocked, earn enough credits to keep the ship supplied, and slowly build a name for themselves as reliable traders. But in the back of Jalen's mind, Orvin Lask's warning echoed. There were debts tied to the Azure Wind, and certain people might want to collect them. That evening, as Mira plotted their next jump, a soft chime came from the communications panel. Jalen stepped over to check it. The signal was faint, barely strong enough to reach their range. It was not coming from any colony or station. It was coming from a ship. "This is the freighter Solari Drift," a voice said through static. "We have experienced a drive malfunction and are drifting without power. Requesting any nearby vessel for assistance." Dax glanced at Jalen. "Could be a trap. Could be someone in real trouble," Mira said. "We're the only ones close enough to respond." Jalen thought for a moment. "We'll answer, but we keep our shields ready." He opened the channel. "Solari Drift, this is the Azure Wind. We're altering course to assist. Send us your coordinates." The other ship sent the data. Mira entered it into the navigation system, and the Azure Wind turned toward the drifting vessel. 20 minutes later, they came within visual range. The Solari Drift was a medium-sized freighter, its lights dim and its hull showing signs of long service. No weapons were visible, but Jalen knew that did not always mean much. They matched speed and approached slowly. Jalen hailed them again. "Solari Drift, we're alongside. Prepare for docking." A moment later, the two ships were connected by a docking bridge. Jalen took his toolkit and stepped aboard the freighter with Dax. The air inside smelled of burnt wiring, and the corridors were dim. They found the captain in the engine room, a tall man with tired eyes and a worn jacket. "Drive regulator's gone," the man said. "We've been dead in space for hours. If you can fix it, we'll be in your debt." Jalen inspected the regulator. It was a model he had worked on before, though this one had been poorly maintained. Within half an hour, he had replaced a burnt-out coil and rebalanced the system. The engines hummed back to life. "Not bad," the captain said. "Wish I had someone like you on my crew." "Keep your systems checked more often," Jalen replied. "It'll save you trouble." They left the freighter and returned to the Azure Wind. As they prepared to separate, the freighter captain called over the channel. By the way, Captain Var, word's going around about your ship. Someone's asking questions about the Azure Wind, Outer Rim Guild, if my guess is right. If I were you, I'd watch my back. The channel closed before Jalen could answer. He sat in silence for a moment, then looked at Mira and Dax. It has started. Mira's expression tightened. If they're looking for you already, we need a plan. Dax leaned back in his chair. I say we keep moving. The guild's big, but space is bigger. We just have to stay one step ahead. For the next few days, they followed that plan. They avoided major trade hubs where the guild might have contacts, choosing instead to dock at smaller outposts. They traded goods for food, fuel, and parts, building up their supplies. The credits came slowly, but they kept the ship running. On the 5th day, they arrived at a mining station called Loran's Reach. It was little more than a cluster of metal, structures clinging to an asteroid, but it offered a safe place to refuel. While Dax handled the cargo exchange, Jalen and Mira stayed on the bridge, monitoring the surrounding space. That was when the warning alarm sounded. A ship was approaching at high speed. Its transponder code was hidden, but its profile was sleek and dangerous. It was no freighter. It was a pursuit craft. Guild? Mira asked, already adjusting the shields. Most likely, Jalen said. Dax, get back aboard now. Dax's voice came through the comm. On my way. The pursuit craft closed in quickly. A channel opened, and a cold voice spoke. Captain Var, the Azure Wind belongs to the Outer Rim Guild. You have something of ours. Surrender the ship, and we may allow you to walk away. Jalen kept his voice steady. This ship was transferred to me legally. If the guild has a claim, they can bring it to a magistrate, the voice replied with a hint of amusement. We don't deal with magistrates. We deal with problems directly. The channel closed. The pursuit craft began to maneuver for an intercept. Mira looked at Jalen. What's the move? Get us clear of the station, Jalen said. We'll make a jump once we have distance. The Azure Wind surged forward, pulling away from Loran's Reach. The pursuit craft followed, matching every move. Jalen kept his focus on the controls, weaving through the sparse asteroid field around the station. The guild pilot was skilled, but so was Jalen. Every turn bought them a little more time. Once they cleared the field, Mira began charging the jump drive. The pursuit craft closed in, weapons locking on. A warning tone filled the bridge. Drives. Ready, Mira said. Jump, Jalen ordered. The stars outside stretched into lines as the Azure Wind leapt into hyperspace. The sudden silence that followed felt heavier than before. Dax came onto the bridge, breathing hard. We're not going to be able to hide forever. I know, Jalen said, but we'll choose where the next meeting happens, and we'll be ready for it. The crew exchanged a look of quiet understanding. The guild was coming, but they were not planning to run forever. The Azure Wind dropped out of hyperspace into a quiet sector far from any major trade routes. The stars here seemed colder, sharper, as if the space between them was deeper than elsewhere. It was a good place to hide, at least for a little while. Jalen stood at the navigation console with Mira, reviewing the star maps. The jump had taken them off the guild's main patrol lines, but he knew it would not keep them safe for long. Once the guild set its sights on something, they were relentless. Dax entered the bridge carrying a small data pad. We made a little profit from the last trades, he said. Enough for fuel and supplies, but not much more. If we're going to get ahead, we need a bigger deal. We can't risk major stations yet, Mira said without looking up. Too many eyes, too many guild contacts. Jalen tapped the map. There's a mid-tier outpost here. Not a full station, but big enough for trade. We'll move in quietly, sell what we can, and leave before the guild knows we're there. The crew agreed, and the Azure Wind set course. The journey took 2 days, during which the ship moved through calm space. The hum of the engines became familiar, almost comforting. But the shadow of the guild's threat hung in the background of every conversation. When they arrived, the outpost appeared as a cluster of metal structures linked together by long tubes. It floated in orbit above a dusty planet with faint rings. The docking process was simple, and within the hour, Dax was off the ship to meet local traders while Mira handled resupply. Jalen stayed aboard to run a full diagnostic. He wanted to be sure every system was ready for a quick departure if trouble arrived. Halfway through the checks, the comm system chimed with an incoming message. The voice was smooth and calm. "Captain Var, this is Corin of the Outer Rim Guild. I am not here to threaten you. I am here to talk." Jalen's eyes narrowed. "You found me fast." "It's my job," Corin replied. "I want to make you an offer. We both know the Azure Wind once belonged to Orvin Lask. The ship carries debt the guild is owed. But I am willing to be reasonable. Work for us. Use the ship for guild contracts. Pay down the debt in service instead of credits. In return, you and your crew keep flying." Jalen listened without answering right away. The idea of working for the guild sat heavy in his mind. It was not a choice he wanted to make, but it was a path that could avoid open conflict, for now. "What if I refuse?" Jalen asked. "Then the guild takes the ship," Corin said, his tone still calm. "One way or another. I would prefer this arrangement. It benefits everyone. I'll give you time to think, but not much. My ship will remain in this sector for the next 48 hours. Contact me if you decide you want the deal." The channel closed. Mira returned to the bridge a few minutes later and noticed Jalen's expression. "What happened?" Jalen told her about the call. Dax arrived shortly after, and they all sat together in the lounge to discuss it. Dax leaned forward. "Working. For the guild sounds bad, but losing the ship sounds worse. We could use the time to get stronger, maybe find a way out later." Mira shook her head. "Once you're in with the guild, it's hard to get out. They'll keep finding reasons to keep you under their control." Jalen considered both points. "Either way, we're not deciding this out of fear. If we work for them, it will be on our terms. If we refuse, we'll need a plan to stay ahead." That night, Jalen walked the quiet corridors of the Azure Wind. His hand trailed along the walls as he thought about the choice before them. This ship had been given to him through skill and quick thinking, not luck. If the guild took it, it would mean giving up the future he and his friends could build. By morning, he had made his decision. "We'll meet Corin," Jalen said at breakfast. "But we're not accepting his terms as they are. We'll offer something smaller, one job for them. If they want more after that, we walk." Mira gave a doubtful look. "Do you think they'll agree?" "No," Jalen admitted. "But it will tell us what kind of man Corin is and how far the guild is willing to push." They sent a message, and an hour later, Corin's ship arrived. A black and silver vessel with sharp angles and no visible markings. The meeting took place aboard the Azure Wind in the forward lounge. Corin was a tall man in a plain dark coat, his expression polite but unreadable. "You have my answer," Jalen said after the greetings. "One job. We do it well, we part ways. No long-term deal." Corin's eyes studied him for a moment. "You are bold, Captain Var. The guild does not usually make such small arrangements." "Then make an exception," Jalen said. A faint smile touched Corin's face. "Very well, one job. There is a shipment at Vega Outpost. It must reach a station in the Dervin sector within 4 days. The payment will cover part of the debt, but understand, failure will not be taken lightly." Jalen nodded. "We'll take it." Corin rose from his seat. "I look forward to seeing how you perform. Good luck, Captain Var." When he was gone, Mira let out a slow breath. "So now we're working for the guild, even if it's just once." "Once," Jalen repeated. "And if we do this right, it might buy us enough time to break their trail completely." The Azure Wind left. The outpost soon after her course set for Vega. The crew knew the risks, but they also knew they had chosen their own path, at least for now. The Azure Wind moved steadily through open space toward Vega Outpost. The job sounded simple. Collect cargo and deliver it to the Dervin sector in 4 days. But Jalen could feel that it would not stay simple for long. The guild did not choose couriers at random, and they did not pay for easy work. Dax sat in the pilot's chair while Jalen stood beside him watching the starfield. Mira worked at the ship's systems console, running a scan to make sure nothing unusual was on their tail. "Clear behind us," Mira reported. "No guild ships, no patrols." "Good," Jalen said. "But stay sharp." Vega Outpost came into view a few hours later, a sprawling collection of modules and docking bays, built from metal that had long since faded to a dull gray. It was a trading hub for independent haulers, miners, and fringe merchants. Guild ships visited sometimes, but the station kept its own rules. They docked at Bay 12. A station official with a worn tablet met them at the airlock and directed them to the cargo bay where their shipment waited. Inside, they found a single large container sealed with a black metal lock. "This is it," the official said. "Paperwork's already cleared. Guild seal is on the manifest. You're good to go." Jalen signed the digital form. "Anything I should know about it?" The official shook his head. "They didn't tell me, and I didn't ask." The container was heavy, so they used the ship's loading arm to bring it aboard. Once it was secured in the main hold, Jalen locked the doors and set a guard sensor to alert him if anyone entered without permission. Back on the bridge, Dax asked the question both he and Mira had been holding back. "We're not going to open it, right?" "No," Jalen said. "The guild will know if we do, and if they wanted us to know what it was, they'd have told us." They left Vega Outpost on schedule, heading toward the Dervin sector. For the first day, the trip was uneventful. Jalen began to think that maybe this would be as simple as Corin claimed. But on the second day, Mira picked up something on sensors. "2 ships, closing fast," she said. "No guild markings, but they're armed." Jalen leaned over her. Console. "Pirates?" "Maybe," Mira said, "but they're too well organized for small-time raiders." The ships hailed them. A voice came through, sharp and direct. "Azure Wind, cut your engines and prepare to transfer your cargo. Do this and you will not be harmed." Jalen's jaw tightened. "No," he replied. "We're on a contract. If you want this cargo, you'll have to take it from us." The voice did not answer. Instead, the 2 ships moved to flank the Azure Wind. Dax brought the engines to full power, and the ship surged forward. The pirates gave chase, firing warning shots that shook the hull. Jalen quickly directed Mira to reroute power to the shields, while Dax took them into a dense asteroid field ahead. The rocks spun and tumbled, creating a dangerous but useful cover. The Azure Wind weaved between them, using the larger asteroids to block enemy fire. The pirate ships followed, but the tight turns slowed them down. One of them clipped a smaller asteroid, spinning out of control before regaining position. "This is too close," Dax muttered, gripping the controls. Jalen studied the sensor readout. "There's a narrow passage up ahead. If we hit it at the right speed, we can lose them." Dax threaded the ship through the jagged gap, scraping the shields but making it through. The pirates tried to follow, but the first ship was too wide and slammed into the rocks, forcing the second to pull back. Once clear of the asteroid field, the Azure Wind raced ahead, leaving the attackers far behind. Mira exhaled slowly. "They knew what we were carrying. That wasn't random." "I agree," Jalen said, "which means this cargo is worth more than we thought." They decided to check the hold for any sign of tampering. When they entered, the black container looked unchanged, but something about it felt different. Jalen noticed a faint hum coming from inside. "That wasn't there before," Dax said quietly. Mira scanned the container with her handheld device. "It's shielded against most sensors, but whatever's inside is active. Some kind of power source." Jalen considered their options. They could keep the cargo sealed and finish the job, or they could risk opening it to find out what they were carrying. But breaking the seal would mean the guild would know. "We keep it closed," Jalen said finally. "The less we know, the less trouble we're in." They resumed the journey, but now the air aboard the Azure Wind felt heavier. Every creak of the hull, every blip on the sensors made them tense. Late on the third day, they neared the Dervin sector. The station where they were to deliver the cargo floated ahead, a clean, well-maintained hub with bright running lights. But as they approached, another ship was waiting. Corin's. He hailed them immediately. "Captain Var, I see you made it through your journey." Jalen replied, "We had some trouble. Someone tried to take the cargo." "That was expected," Corin said calmly. "It is a valuable item, but you succeeded, and that is all that matters." They docked at the station and guild workers came aboard to move the container. Jalen stood back and watched, resisting the temptation to ask what was inside. When the job was done, Corin met him in the docking corridor. "You handled this well, Captain. You proved yourself capable. The guild could use more crews like yours." Jalen kept his voice even. "Our deal was one job. This was it." Corin smiled faintly. "Of course, but if you ever want more work, you know where to find me." He handed Jalen a small data chip. "Payment as promised, and a bonus for your skill under pressure." Back aboard the Azure Wind, the crew gathered around the chip. The payment was more than Jalen expected, enough to clear part of the ship's debts and keep them flying for months. But the question remained. What had they carried, and why was it so important? As the ship pulled away from the Dervin station, Jalen looked out at the stars. He knew this was not the end of their connection with the guild. The cargo might be gone, but its shadow would follow them for a long time. The Azure Wind drifted through open space, its engines humming softly. The crew had left the Dervin station behind 2 days ago, and the guild's cargo was no longer aboard. The credits were good, better than Jalen had expected, but the job had left questions he could not forget. He sat in the small mess area, staring at his mug of tea. Mira entered, holding a data pad. "You should see this," she said. The screen showed a news feed from a fringe channel. A picture of a guild research vessel filled the frame, followed by the headline, "Unregistered Energy Core Delivered to Secret Guild Facility." Jalen leaned closer. "Energy Core?" Mira nodded. "If the description is right, it's the same size and shape as the container we carried." Dax walked in and dropped into a chair. "I knew it was something big. The pirates knew too. They must have wanted the core for themselves." Jalen rubbed the back of his neck. "Energy cores are common, but this one had its own power source and heavy shielding. That's not standard." Mira's voice was quiet. "It could be a weapon." They all thought about that for a moment. The guild had many enemies, and it also had its own plans that it never shared with outsiders. Jalen had no way of knowing which category this core fit into. The discussion was interrupted by the sound of the ship's comm alert. Jalen answered, expecting a supply station or a routine message. Instead, the screen lit with the face of a woman he had never seen before. She wore no uniform, but her sharp eyes and steady tone made it clear she knew who he was. "Captain Var," she said, "my name is Drya. I work with a group that opposes the guild. I believe you recently transported something for them. We need to talk." Jalen kept his face neutral. "You must be mistaken." "I'm not," Drya replied. "We tracked the shipment from Vega Outpost to Dervin. We know you had no choice, but if you care about what happens in this sector, you'll want to know what it was." Mira and Dax exchanged glances. Jalen hesitated. "I'm listening." Drya leaned forward on the screen. "The guild has been developing a new kind of energy core. It is not for ships or stations. It is designed to power an experimental planetary shield." One that can block all outside communication and prevent anything from leaving. Once activated, no one inside can send messages out. Entire colonies could be cut off. That sounds like control, Mira said from behind Jalen. It is, Drya confirmed. They plan to use it on worlds that resist guild authority, and the core you delivered is the final piece they needed. Jalen frowned. If that's true, why are you telling me? I'm just a courier. Because you're one of the few who got close without being part of their plan, Drya said. We can't act openly without proof. But if you can get us access to the core before they install it, we can disable it. The line went quiet for a moment. Jalen felt the weight of her words. This was not his fight. His crew had debts, a ship to maintain, and jobs to find. Going after the guild could end their careers, or worse. But he remembered the pirates in the asteroid field, the way they risked everything to take the cargo. He remembered the faint hum of power from inside the container. What do you think? Jalen asked his crew after ending the call. Dax shrugged. It's not our business. But if the guild locks a planet inside a shield, people will suffer. And if we help deliver the thing that makes it happen, I don't like that. Mira's voice was firm. We should at least find out if she's telling the truth. Jalen looked at both of them. Then we'll see where it leads. They contacted Drya again and agreed to meet her at a remote moon station outside guild patrol zones. The journey took a day, and they arrived to find a small, weathered dock with only a few ships tied up. Drya was waiting in a dim control room, wearing the same calm expression she had shown on the comm. You came, she said simply. Tell us what you need, Jalen replied. Drya activated a holomap showing a guild research facility orbiting, a gas giant. The core is here. It has not yet been installed. We can get you close using forged docking codes. Your job is to get inside, place this device on the core, and leave. The device will disable it permanently. She handed Jalen a small black module. Mira studied the map. Security will be tight. Not as tight as it will be after installation, Drya said. This is our only chance. The crew returned to the azure wind and set course for the facility. As they approached, Dax sent the forged codes. To their relief, the station's docking system accepted them without question. Inside, the air was cool and clean. They moved quickly through quiet corridors until they reached the cargo vault. There it was, the same black container still, sealed, but connected to a power conduit. The hum was louder now. Jalen stepped forward and attached Drya's device. The lights on the module flickered green, then blue, then went dark. That's it, Mira whispered. They turned to leave, but a voice stopped them. I wondered if you'd come back. Corin stood at the end of the corridor, flanked by 2 guild officers. His expression was calm, almost amused. You did well on the first job, Corin continued, but you should have stayed away. Now, you've forced me to decide whether you're an asset or a problem. Jalen met his gaze. The guild doesn't own us, and it doesn't own the people you plan to trap with this thing. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Corin smiled slightly. Leave. Now. Take your ship and go. I will tell the guild the core failed during transport. This conversation never happened. Jalen studied him. Corin's tone was genuine, but his eyes held something else. Maybe respect, maybe warning. They left without another word. Back on the azure wind, the engines roared to life. The station faded into the distance. In the mess area, Jalen sat with his crew. We made a choice today, he said. It may follow us. The guild doesn't forget. Mira smiled faintly. Neither do we. The ship turned toward open space, stars stretching ahead in endless rows. The guild's shadow was still out there. But for now, the azure wind was free, and so were the worlds that might have been trapped.